champion of the world, Dustin the Diamond Poirier.
They say greatness demands a price. But what happens when two men pay it in full and still walk back into the fire? Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway never chased glory. They embodied it. They weren't born with silver spoons or padded paths. Their roads were paved with blood, setbacks, and soul-crushing wars. Yet every time life dared to knock them down, they rose, swinging harder than before. They didn't beg for respect. They bled for it. Because when the cage closes and all the cameras fade, it's not about belts or fame. It's about legacy. And for these two warriors, that meant leaving everything inside the octagon. Dustin Poirier never needed to be loud to be legendary. Raised in the unforgiving streets of Lafayette, Louisiana, his fists became his way of surviving long before they earned him a paycheck. At 10, he was arrested for knocking a teenager's teeth out. At 15, he was expelled from school. Juvenile detention, probation, boot camps. He wasn't heading toward the American dream. He was sprinting toward destruction, but beneath the rage was a storm waiting for direction. Fighting didn't just save him, it gave him a reason to live. And the moment he met mixed martial arts, it felt like destiny shook his hand. Max Holloway, on the other hand, was born in the chaos of Hawaii's streets, where fighting was less sport and more language. He grew up watching his idols fall, not in the cage, but to drugs, violence, and dead-end dreams. So he made a vow. He wouldn't be next. He wouldn't just rise. He would take flight. His hands became poetry in motion. His chin became folklore. And inside the cage, he didn't just fight opponents. He dismantled them with a smile. He was a storm disguised as sunlight, calm in chaos, and always willing to die on his feet before surrendering on his knees. But no matter how far they climbed, they never forgot the fire that built them. Dustin found an anchor in love. His wife, Jolie, was the one soul who believed in him when the world saw nothing but a lost kid with a short fuse. She saw the diamond before it was polished. And when Dustin stood broken and beaten,
rough high school, end up getting kicked out of school, back into an alternative school, stopped going to that, started running with the wrong guys, hanging around with the wrong people, doing the wrong things,
it was her voice that reminded him who he was. "You're not done yet," she whispered. And he wasn't. Because a real fighter doesn't quit when the lights dim. He rises when no one is watching. Max Holloway's rise was different, but no less punishing. After a loss to Conor McGregor, he returned to the shadows, sharpening his blades. 9 straight wins later, he re-emerged, not just as a contender, but as a nightmare. Anthony Pettis, Jose Aldo, Brian Ortega, he tore through them like a man possessed. His volume, his pace, his refusal to back down, it wasn't just fighting, it was art. When he pointed to the ground and dared his opponents to trade, it wasn't arrogance, it was invitation. Let's find out who wants it more. And more often than not, it was Max standing tall when the dust settled. But every rise has its fall. Dustin faced Conor McGregor in 2014 and let the noise inside his head drown out his instincts. The Irishman's venom got in deep, and on fight night, Dustin wasn't himself. He crumbled, and the world laughed. But Dustin didn't run. He rebuilt. He suffered. He grew teeth. And when they met again years later, Dustin silenced the ghost that once haunted him with a thunderous knockout that echoed around the globe. That wasn't just revenge. It was a resurrection. The diamond didn't need gold to shine. He just needed another shot. Max knew that too. Against Jose Aldo, he didn't just beat a legend. He dethroned a king in front of his home crowd. And when Aldo begged for redemption, Max did it again. Worse. But the crown came at a cost. 3 brutal wars with Alexander Volkanovski followed. 3 defeats, each more painful than the last. But Max never complained. He never folded. "It is what it is," he said. And with blood in his mouth and pride in his heart, he fought on. Because some warriors don't need belts. They just need battles. Dustin's wars became folklore. Epic bloodbaths with Justin Gaethje, Dan Hooker, and Michael Chandler. These weren't just fights. They were symphonies of violence, masterpieces of grit. His opponents didn't just lose. They were baptized in suffering. He wore his scars like medals. Every elbow, every cut, every broken bone. It was all part of the gospel. But when he stood across Charles Oliveira for the undisputed title, destiny blinked. He dropped the champ, had him rocked, but couldn't finish. Then came the tap. Another heartbreak. Another lesson. But Dustin didn't crumble. He simply whispered, "Back to work." Meanwhile, Max returned from the Volkanovski trilogy and made a statement. He dismantled Arnold Allen with precision and poise, proving that he hadn't lost a step. Then came the Korean Zombie, a legend, a warrior, and a fan favorite. But Max didn't care for fairy tales. In the third round, he knocked Zombie into retirement with a cold right hand, respectfully sending him into the night. Max didn't fight for anger. He fought for legacy. For those who said he was done, he had one message: you must have forgot. What Dustin and Max share isn't just skill, it's soul. They've walked through fire, faced gods, fallen, and risen with more fury than before. They've buried their egos and fought for something purer than fame, for family, for self-respect, for every kid who was told they'd never make it. They've danced with pain and treated suffering like an old friend. Every time they enter the cage, it's a sermon, a lesson, a warning. Because when the bell rings, the world witnesses two men who've already been to hell and didn't flinch. There's something poetic about the way Dustin Poirier bleeds. He doesn't panic. He doesn't retreat. He studies the chaos, then walks deeper into it. Against Dan Hooker, he bled like a faucet, absorbing bombs in a war that many said would end his career. But Dustin didn't just survive, he won. With elbows, counters, and raw will, he proved once again that pain was a language he'd mastered. The world watched in awe as both men collapsed in exhaustion, but only one had enough breath left to raise his hand. The diamond had been chipped, bruised, and battered, but never broken. Max Holloway is cut from the same cloth. There's a reason fans call him blessed. Not because life handed him gifts, but because he turned curses into blessings. Against Calvin Kattar, Max didn't just win. He gave a clinic in violence. Mid-fight, he screamed, "I'm the best boxer in the UFC," while dodging punches without looking. That wasn't just bravado, it was truth. His hands painted masterpieces. His feet were symphonic. His chin, unshakable. He broke records that night. Most significant strikes landed in UFC history. Most swagger. Most heart. Max wasn't fighting for belts anymore. He was fighting for greatness carved in stone. But no matter how high they soared, gravity always found them. Another dream slipping through bloody fingers. Dustin sat in the aftermath, not angry, not bitter, but haunted. "I worked so hard," he said, "and one night, it all feels gone." Max knew that emptiness. After losing to Volkanovski for the third time, many thought it was over. No trilogy ends like that without leaving scars. But Max, always humble in victory and graceful in defeat, took the pain and turned it into momentum. He welcomed every contender with open arms and closed fists. When Arnold Allen stepped in with youth, power, and ambition, Max welcomed him to the deep waters. 5 rounds later, Allen knew exactly why Max Holloway was still feared. He wasn't just a gatekeeper, he was the gate, and he didn't let anyone pass through without earning every inch. When Dustin met Michael Chandler, it wasn't just another brawl, it was warfare. Chandler came in like a missile, throwing bombs, taking risks, hunting the highlight reel. Dustin welcomed the madness. He wore blood like war paint and fired back with sniper precision. Midway through the chaos, he snatched Chandler's neck and squeezed like a man who'd had enough. Enough of setbacks, enough of doubt, enough of people asking if he was still hungry. That night, Dustin proved he wasn't chasing gold. He was chasing immortality. And with every choke, every hook, every roar, he was one step closer. Then came UFC 300. Max Holloway moved up in weight to face Justin Gaethje, the BMF champion, the man who had just ended Dustin Poirier with a head kick from hell. It was the kind of fight that defined careers or destroyed them. But Max didn't flinch. The bell rang, and from the opening seconds, it was war. Spinning kicks, nose breaks, eye pokes, pressure. The octagon wasn't a cage, It was a coliseum. Max walked forward like a man possessed, absorbing fire and returning it tenfold. And in the final 10 seconds, he did the unthinkable. Pointed to the center and dared Gaethje to stand and bang. What happened next rewrote history. With 1 second left in the 5th round, Max Holloway detonated a right hand that sent Gaethje crashing to the canvas. The BMF belt was his. The arena erupted. Fighters wept. Commentators lost their minds. Max Holloway had not only survived the storm, he became it. The latest knockout in UFC history, the crowning of a new king, and a reminder to the world: never count out the man who fights with nothing left to prove, but everything still to give. Dustin's return came soon after. Many said he was done. A legend, sure, but past his prime. Then he faced Benoit Saint-Denis, an undefeated savage, young, vicious, and full of steam. The kind of man who breaks veterans and builds hype. But Dustin wasn't having it. He fought with the patience of a sniper and the fire of a lion. In round 2, he unleashed a punch that shut the lights out. Silence followed. Then chaos. The Diamond was back. Not for money, not for glory, for the love of the war, for the fire inside that never stopped burning. Max wasn't done rewriting his legacy either. After Gaethje, the world asked what came next. Would he chase the featherweight belt again? Would he stay at lightweight and rule as the BMF king? But Max didn't speak in interviews. He spoke in violence. He eyed the top, and the top looked back. Ilia Topuria, Islam Makhachev. 2 monsters. 2 different paths. But Max doesn't fear monsters. He's danced with too many. He isn't here to protect a record. He's here to build a story. And every chapter bleeds, sweats, and roars. And yet, through all their battles, the most haunting truth is this: they've never been fully broken. Not by champions, not by time, not by critics. That's what makes them different. Dustin and Max don't just fight, they endure. They don't rise because they're invincible. They rise because they've accepted pain as the price of greatness. Their stories are written not in gold, but in grit. Not in victories, but in how they handle defeat. Because in the end, the scariest opponent isn't the one with power. It's the one who has nothing left to lose and still chooses to fight. Dustin Poirier stepped into the cage one more time. Not because he needed to, but because his soul demanded it. Across from him stood Islam Makhachev, the new ruler, the heir to Khabib's throne, and the pound-for-pound king. Everyone called it a mismatch. Too old, too slow, too late. But Dustin walked in with the eyes of a man who'd already seen hell. Islam brought the pressure, the grappling, the suffocating weight of Dagestani dominance. But Poirier didn't fold. For 5 rounds, they clashed in a brutal war that defied expectation. Dustin shut down takedowns, traded fire, and kept marching forward, round after unforgiving round. Max Holloway watched from afar, and somewhere in that storm of blood and breath, he saw his own reflection. 2 fighters written off too soon, battling time itself. In the final round, Islam finally found an opening and locked in a vicious submission. The Diamond had no escape. The tap came. The arena fell silent. But something strange happened after the loss. The world didn't pity Dustin. They praised him. Because he didn't just survive. He made Islam look human. In his twilight, Poirier delivered the best performance of his career. That night, he didn't lose. He transcended. And this is the paradox. Dustin Poirier never became the undisputed champion. But he became something rarer, an undisputed legend. Look at his resume, and you'll see a graveyard of warriors: Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, Eddie Alvarez, Dan Hooker, Conor McGregor. Win or lose, every time he stepped inside that cage, he dragged his opponent into a storm. And when the clouds cleared, he stood there, covered in blood, smiling through the pain. Because he never needed the belt to validate his worth. He only needed the war, and war never stopped loving him back. Max Holloway's path was no less mythic. He fought across generations: McGregor, Aldo, Ortega, Volkanovski, Kadar, Gaethje, and never once lost his identity. He made violence beautiful. He made pressure feel poetic. And when they asked if he was still elite, He didn't answer with words. He answered with fists, with movement, with chin, with heart. When Max Holloway fights, time bends, records fall, and the crowd forgets to breathe. He may have never reclaimed the featherweight crown, but his name was etched far deeper into something more permanent than gold: memory. Together, Dustin and Max represent a dying breed. Fighters who never chose the easy path, men who never ducked a name, never hid from the fire. They chased the hardest fights, the highest stakes, and the longest odds. And somehow they made losing look like triumph, because their greatness was never in the numbers, it was in the heart. In the moments when quitting whispered in their ears and they screamed back, "Not yet." That's what makes them terrifying. That's what makes them timeless. They weren't just champions, they were truth. Dustin's body is scarred now. Surgeries, breaks, bruises that never fully healed. But behind those scars is a man who never asked for sympathy. Only one more round, one more test. Every time he lost, he came back stronger. Every time he won, he thanked his team, his wife, and the war itself. He built a family, a foundation, a legacy. He started a charity, changed lives, proved that a violent man can still be a kind man, that a fighter can be more than just fists. Dustin Poirier didn't just grow into greatness, he earned every bloody inch of it. Max, too, is older now. Slower? Maybe, but wiser, sharper, more dangerous than ever, because there's nothing more lethal than a man who's seen it all and still chooses to dance in the fire. The BMF title wasn't just another belt, it was validation, that no matter how many setbacks came, he never left, never compromised, never forgot who he was. Max Holloway is what happens when you mix joy with violence, when you smile through chaos, when you talk to the commentators mid-fight while dissecting your opponent. He is a paradox, gentle off camera, savage under lights. Both men now stand at the edge of their final chapters. The clock ticks louder. The cage door echoes harder. Fans watch closely, wondering when the last walk will come. But until that day, Dustin and Max fight like it's their first, with urgency, with purpose, with a fury that can't be taught. Young fighters come and go. Records are made and broken. But legends outlast time. And these two, these men of fire and soul, have already secured their place among the gods of the sport. Dustin once said, "To be safe, you must be dangerous." And he lived by it. Max once said, "It is what it is," and kept moving forward no matter what came. These aren't just quotes, they're philosophies carved into bone. Through heartbreak and triumph, through wars and wounds, they never ran. They walked into every storm like it was home. And in doing so, they didn't just earn respect, they redefined it. And so the question remains, what is scarier than fighting Dustin Poirier or Max Holloway? It's realizing you can't break them, that no matter what you throw, no matter how hard you hit, they'll still be there, bleeding, smiling, and daring you to do it again. Because diamonds don't crack, and blessings don't fade. They rise, again, and again, and again. The cage will one day close for the final time. The gloves will rest, the lights will dim. But their stories, those will echo forever. Not as undefeated champions, but as undefeated spirits. The scariest kind of fighter, the kind who doesn't fear losing, the kind who's already faced every demon and walked away with fire in his eyes. And now as the final chapter looms, only one thing is certain. The world may one day forget belts, but it will never forget the diamond, and it will never forget Blessed.